Okay, so as folks are joining us, I'm going to go ahead and welcome us to today's community of practice. So today's community of practice features Arkansas's Department of Agriculture's Urban and Community Forestry program. We have guest speakers Kristine Kimbro and Harold Fisher. So I will say Harold Fisher is the Urban and Community Forestry Partnership Coordinator with the Arkansas Department of Agriculture. He coordinates with the Tree City USA communities in Arkansas, and he is also in charge of the State Champion Tree Program, working to ensure the program is always up to date. Harold has an associate's degree in natural resources management from Laurel Ridge Community College in Middletown, Virginia, and he has over 30 years of practical forestry experience, having worked for the National Park Service, the Virginia Department of Forestry, and now the Arkansas Department of Agriculture. So we're excited to have you, Harold. And then Kristine Kimbrough's forestry career took root in her native Texas, where she earned a forest management degree in 1999. She worked for Weyerhaeuser before branching out, becoming a paramedic and later a classroom teacher. Her forestry career resprouted in 2019, serving first as a county forester and then as the urban and community forestry coordinator for Arkansas. Kristine lives in Arkadelphia, serves on the Arkansas Urban Forestry Council Board and Arkansas Steering Committee for Project Learning Tree, and loves to travel and spend time outdoors with her three girls, ages 18, 13, and 11. So the next voice you will hear will be Kristine. So happy to
Mhm.
have you both, and excited to hear what you have to share with us today.
Thank you for inviting us to share about one of our favorite programs, which is the Shade Trees on Playgrounds program, and we call it STOP. I'm working off of two monitors, so I have the presentation in front of me, but you will occasionally see me look off to the side, just for our next slides and that kind of thing. Harold Fisher and I are going to be bouncing back and forth on some of these, so you're going to hear from both of us, and I'll move on into our presentation and introduce us. These are photos from actual shade trees on playgrounds, tree plantings. The photo on the left is near and dear to me because it was one of the first stop programs I participated in when I was a county forester, when I first started with the agency, and had no idea at the time that I would end up becoming the urban and community forestry coordinator and kind of helping spearhead the program with Harold across the state. So I'm the Urban and Community Forestry Coordinator, and Harold is our Partnership Coordinator. Both of those are positions that are required in every state to receive the USDA Forest Service federal grant funding that our states use to operate the Urban and Community Forestry Program in each state. We also have on the call with us today, she's not listed on the slideshow, but Yvette Browning is also part of our three-member staff for urban and community forestry, and she helps oversee several of our major sub-award grant programs that we do. And so she's based in Little Rock. I'm in Arkadelphia, and Harold is in Greenbrier. And if you're not familiar with Arkansas, Yvette's right in the middle. Harold's kind of a little bit west of that, and I'm a little bit southwest of that. So we'll jump right into our presentation. And Harold I'm going to let him go ahead and say hello to you, and he'll start off with a brief introduction and kind of an overview of what our presentation is going to cover today.
Thank you, Chrissy. Yeah, I want to talk to you about our Shade Trees on Playgrounds program. And just to give you a little bit of a brief overview, it started approximately 20 years ago, addresses dual goals of educating youth and benefits of trees and decreasing the risk of adult skin cancer by providing shade trees for the playgrounds and outdoor learning areas across the state. And we're going to explain the program more in this presentation, and hope maybe you get a little something out of it.
And one thing I didn't mention, all three of us are ISA certified arborists, and we're going to talk a little bit more about how the three of us could not run this program across the state by ourselves. So we have help throughout the state with other employees, and we'll talk about that here in just a moment.
Yeah. And yeah, it was created in 2003. One of the things, construction, they do a great job putting the school up, and then we put a playground up, but they don't think about those kids that are out there in Arkansas. They get two 20-minute periods of being out. And so we have some hot times when these kids are in school, and it is definitely something that started, like I said, it started in 2003, but it was a need to help improve our playgrounds and promote, the benefits of trees to the kids.
Additional goals that we had, we wanted to see skin cancer rates reduced across the state, ideally across the nation, and promote benefits of trees to students and community members, faculty, staff, the adults, and the students in the schools, make the playgrounds more enjoyable, and provide opportunities for education and outreach, both through the program and then creating partnerships with their local forestry division staff in the area and other forestry professionals. So a part of that education and outreach piece is also promoting green careers for the students too. Um, a lot of the schools where we have these, you've got kids raised in the urban jungle, and so they may not be aware of forestry as even a career. We don't have nearly as many children that are going out and helping plant anything with parents or grandparents. So for a lot of these kids, and you can see it when we're out there with them, it may be the first time they've even held a shovel, or for some of them even gotten their hands really dirty, in the soil on planting. So that's one of the goals, is to give them an experience they may not have through their home lives.
We talked to the kids about skin safety and stewardship. The severe childhood sunburns, they increase the chance of adult malignant melanoma. So we definitely hit the issue with them on skin cancer awareness, and shade is one of the benefits of provided by the trees. And the other thing is the early exposure to the positive tree experiences will help grow adult tree champions, we're hoping.
So these photos kind of highlight different aspects of the process for how the STOP program works. We try to tailor it to the school year. When I first was hired as the Urban and Community Forestry Coordinator, the Forestry Division would invite schools to apply in the spring, and then they would select them. Well, the best time to plant trees in Arkansas is the fall. And I knew, coming from that classroom teacher background, a lot of times you might have Miss Jones, the third grade teacher, applies for her school in March, and over the summer, Miss Jones gets assigned to a different campus, and so she's no longer the tree champion for that campus. So our first goal in changing the process was we wanted schools to apply, be selected, and have the ceremonies and plant the trees all within the same school year, but also make sure that there was a way to provide continuity in future years. So it's not just one teacher's project that she applied for one time. So we start out by having the schools apply online, and that's the top photo up there by process. That's a screenshot of the 24 application. We use Google Forms and make it fairly simple. Basically, we ask for contact information, the size of their playground, how many trees they currently have, and then we ask them questions like, how would you incorporate learning about trees cross-curricularly? There's no wrong answers. It's almost like when a classroom teacher gives a pretest. I kind of want to see, what do they know so far about watering trees, incorporating it across different subject areas in the school, and what are their thoughts about who's going to participate and have a part in it. So we ask them who's going to help take care of the trees, And we get answers from every student on campus. We'll help take care of them to I, Mrs. Smith, will come in every day during the summer and water the trees. That doesn't necessarily throw that school out, but if they're selected, that lets us know, hey, we want to be sure that we push the part about we want buy-in from your entire campus, students and teachers, and community, the family members and community volunteers as well. So that's what we're looking for on the application. Um, this year we had many more applications than what we normally have in a year. So we use the applications to kind of narrow it down. Typically, we will go out or have field staff go out and look at each campus to verify. For instance, they might say we have 0 trees on campus, but you get out there and they have a forested area that borders the playground on 3 sides. So that playground is still getting a little bit of shade. They may not have as great a need as a new construction school that has 0 shade within a half-mile radius. So we had so many applicants this year, 157. That was too many to get to every one of them. So we narrowed it down by taking our playgrounds that were less than a half acre in size, because we'll address this later in the presentation, but we offer up to 5 large shade trees. So for this year, as our first stab at dealing with that many applicants, we said we're going to not pick schools that couldn't handle that many trees on their playground. Going forward, we want to use that piece to say, you know, we might be able to pair up 2 schools, and this school might get 2 trees and this school 3. So those are some of the questions we ask on there. After they apply online, we select 10. And the picture you see on the left is a map of our forestry division districts. And you can see where we have, I don't know if the numbers show up well on your screen, but districts 6, 1, and there's an 8 up there. It's district 3 now, but there's 2 different shadings of the same color. That's a large area. It's 1 district, but we have 2 what we call urban forestry district representatives in that area. And so for each of those color blocks, we try to pick 1 school. Where you see the 6 on your screen is Northwest Arkansas. That's where Fayetteville, Bentonville, home of Walmart is. And so we typically get a lot more applicants there than we do in, say, District 2, which is a lot more rural Southwest Arkansas. And so it's not necessarily the most needy 10 schools in the state. It's going to be, we try to pick the neediest school or the most appropriate school per district so that we offer 1 school per district. Once those are selected, we have a virtual training workshop. And in that, we have Harold and I give a presentation that kind of explains the program, the history of it, what we're going to do for them, what we ask they do, and goes through the process of the ceremonies and the tree plantings. After the training workshop and during the training workshop, we connect them with their local forestry division, urban forestry representative. And then they partner up and the local staff works with them on picking trees. Again, more details on this later, just an overview, picking the trees, deciding where to put them, and providing any additional resources for teaching. After that, then the schools are turned loose and they teach their students about the benefits of trees and skin cancer awareness. And that would be the young lady in the tree costume there. She was doing a project in class. And after the learning, then we celebrate with a ceremony and we plant the trees. And those happen on the same day. It's a school-wide ceremony and school-wide participation in planting the trees.
And as you can see, we try to distribute them throughout the whole state. We try to get our 10 schools where we've got it all spread out. And last year, like I said, we had 157, so we brought it down to 10. That was kind of a tough job to get it down there, which is probably a good problem to have. We had that many applications. That was really good. But yes, that's a this distribution for 2025. And the schools will receive up to 5 Arkansas native shade trees. We're going to provide some technical assistance to help them. We will have usually we have about 2 people per hole that we have with the children, and they will help them to just to plant the tree correctly. So that we'll talk more about that. We also give them educational resources. They're going to focus on the skin cancer and prevention and the importance of trees as well.
I'm going to point out one last thing on this picture before we go to the next slide. I took several photos this year similar to this. You hear that joke all the time about government employees just standing beside a project leaning on their shovel. Well, STOP is the one time that you want to see government employees leaning on their shovels because we actually want the kids doing the planting. So the schools agree by being selected to conduct educational activities. And as I mentioned before, we like to see those incorporated in all their curriculum areas. So everything from PE to math, science, reading, art. We want the school to plan an all-campus ceremony. We give them the components and the general outline, but they're free to plan the ceremony in the way that works best for their campus and their students. We do offer these to everything from pre-K through 12th grade. So obviously you've got different attention spans there and different levels of what the kids are willing to do, up in front of all their peers. We ask the school to promote the STOP program in their local community, and they do that by we provide a press release statewide. They can share that. A lot of them now will promote it on social media, and that has been fabulous. I followed all of our selected schools this year on social media, and it was great. They've posted stuff throughout the year about it, and we asked them to report volunteer hours and submit photos of the event and to maintain and care for the trees after planting.
And what we're going to do is we're going to come out, we're going to help them to select the best species and the best planting locations for their particular species of tree that they're planting on their school grounds. We're going to verify that the holes are the appropriate size holes. They're not too big. I've had some horror stories where I've had to go back in and fill because you leave it up to the grounds folks, and sometimes you get a very large hole that almost ends up being almost like a grave. So we want to make sure that they're the proper height for the trees when we go to put them in on that day. Uh, we're going to purchase and we'll deliver the trees prior to the planting day. We're going to help the students plant their trees. As I said, we usually have try to get about two forestry people per hole to be there to help guide them in planting the tree. And again, all we're doing is basically guiding them where we want them to plant them. And we're going to provide consultation and advice afterwards. We always tell them, look, being that you got these trees, that doesn't mean it stops then. You call us if we have a problem with a tree, and we'll come out and we'll take a look at it with you and see what we need to do.
Harold has had this slide in most of our presentations that we've given on this before. So I took a moment while he was talking there to jump into the chat. And let me address a couple of those real quickly. Thank you for the shovels. I will say I'm 5'1", if you can't tell from me sitting in my chair. And so the first year as a county forester, when I went to one of these, I grabbed a couple of shovels that were the little short shovels, and the guys all made fun of me. Oh, ha ha, little baby Chrissy height. Chrissy's my nickname. Shovels. But let me tell you, those lower stature kindergarten students can outplant the high school kids using the age appropriate, size appropriate shovels. So in the years since that, Harold and I have each purchased a set of kindergarten size shovels and full size shovels to make it easier on the students planting. There was also the praise for the tree shirts that were on that previous slide. That is a Project Learning Tree activity, and we'll cover Project Learning Tree shortly. And then there was a question about if we've experienced any challenges with permitting, accessibility requirements, or resistance by school districts. I think we're going to address those as we go forward. But Julia, if we don't answer your question well enough on that, please come back to that at the end. And then there was a question about home daycares. No to the home daycares, but we do offer to both public and private schools. So we have planted on some private school campuses. We have done some daycares as well, but not any in-home ones. And the reason for that is our program is federally grant funded, and so we need to be planting the trees on public property. And the private school, it is open to the community and to the public to pay for and attend that school. It's kind of a fine line there, a gray line between public schools and private schools. But a home daycare, you're going to end up planting it on someone's personal property that is that homeowner's. So a little bit less longevity guarantee than you would have even with a private school. Any more questions that pop up, I'll come back to those here in just a little bit. Let me go to the next slide. So the community partnerships are very important to us. And what I want to point out here on the bottom right picture, that is actually the nursing staff and the superintendent of one of our selected schools a few years ago. And the nurses, those were all the school nurses for their different campuses, but they jumped on board and they actually reached out to local dermatologists and pediatricians and had some of them come in and give presentations. They got little sample size tubes of sunscreen to provide for each of the students. So it was just a neat way to tie in some more community partners that you wouldn't necessarily think of with tree programs. And then in the top picture, that's someone's father that had the ability to provide water through his work truck. And so he came out and partnered with them. And then the bottom left, that's one of our employees with the students, and just an example of we do offer the students to name their trees. So that tree on that campus was named Rudy, and that was by the third grade. There is a tree in the state of Arkansas on a school campus at an undisclosed location named Donald Trump for interest. The educational resources. So Project Learning Tree, if you're not familiar with that, one of the hallmark statements that they have is we teach children to think about environmental education, not what to think. So as a former classroom teacher, speaking to any of you out there that do work for public schools, you know that some schools are very, very particular about accepted curriculum or approved curriculum. So we don't have a curriculum per se that we hand them. We show them these different resources, and I have all of these pulled up as files that, as time allows at the end, we can pull up and kind of explore some of those. And I can send them to Lauren and Mikaela to send out to y'all afterwards if you're interested. But we give them different resources that they can use to incorporate into their teaching and their learning standards based on what their district allows the teachers to do. But the shirts, like I said, that was an activity from Project Learning Tree. The Discovering the Urban Forest activity book and The Forest Where Ashley Lives are both print workbooks. And well, the Urban Forest is an activity book, and then The Forest Where Ashley Lives is a read aloud book. And both of those, we have PDF versions of them that we do send out to the teachers. As you're aware, so much of the students' learning now is on Chromebooks. And so we started sending out the digital copies, and that way they can push them out to their students. And as possible, we can send a print copy out to the media specialist to keep in the library. Also, I don't have a picture of it on here, but we have a STOP handbook that we put out for the teachers, and I'll pull that up at the end. It's hard to pull it up while I've got the presentation going on the slideshow. All right, here's your question about the ceremonies. Harold, go after it.
Yeah, if I don't answer it, we'll make sure we get to it. So we're going to select the date, and then we also have them select a rain date. They're going to plan an agenda. They're going to send out invitations to the guests and media. A lot of times we have congressmen show up to our events. That's really nice. Sometimes we have city mayors that'll show up to them. The student involvement in the planning and the performances. I've seen some really good performances over the years. We have a lot of good presentations. They'll do songs about trees, and it's just a really fun time. And then one of us will be at every stop program, and we'll be the speaker for our end of things. And we talk to them about skin cancer, which we hope they've already talked about, in their school curriculum for the program. And then again, like I said, we put out have them. They'll do invitations. It can be as uh, complex or as small as they would like, but we want them to have that invitation out so that the kids, are a partner to this, and they have some ownership in it, and they are part of putting this whole program together. So yeah, we definitely put the invitation, have them have the invitations to have, like I said, congressmen or whatever, you know, to come to it. So that's another thing that we have them do.
A lot of districts now have East Labs, even at the elementary level. And so the kids will actually put together they'll have a team of kids that work with the staff to put together the invitation and the programs. And then, like I said, with the rise in social media, just in the 6 years that I've been doing this, we'll see a lot more of they publish this on social media and gets a lot more attention for them too. And then they come in after the event and they can post the pictures. So family members for every student can go online and see pictures of the day, even if they weren't able to attend. So the actual planting, I think there was one question about how that works. We again leave that up to the school. We do provide guidance in that we want all students to be a part of the tree planting. Typically, what they choose is to have grade levels pick a tree, and so each grade level works together to plant a tree. Um, Predominantly, we do still have K-5 schools that are applying and selected for this. And so that works really well. You know, kindergarten has their tree, first grade has theirs. A lot of times, like K through 5, you're going to end up with one extra grade level. So what I recommend is that they partner the fifth graders who are going to be leaving the campus with the kindergartners because the kinders need a little bit more help and they're going to have the tree longer. So we partner up the ones that are leaving with the ones that are just starting. We leave it up to them to name the trees if they want to. We make sure that they have the common and the scientific name of the tree, but then if they want to add names like Gummy or Oakley or Donald Trump, they can do that. And it's really fun to hear back from the schools. Sometimes they select kids, like they'll have a learning a competition on that showcases the learning that they've done, and then the winners of the competition get to pick a name, or they might have the grade level suggests names and then the grade level votes on it, or each grade level suggests names and the whole school votes on it. Different ways of doing that. They have done hand lettered signs. We've had schools that have bought plaques with the tree names on it. So just up to the school, however much they want to invest in that. The Forestry Division guides and the students plant. And this is Arkansas. We have a bunch of great guys that they want to help. They don't want to see kids or women out there having to do all the work when they're there to help. But this is where I want the kids doing it, even if they're struggling. So we've been at some of these where I've had to go up to our staff and say, Brian, hand the shovel to the kids. Let them do it. Well, I was just trying to help it. So we're there to help them, but we do want them to do most of the work, and they love it. Then part of that planting day is providing adult education. One example is when we teach about mulching the trees, and we do provide a tree and mulch in a water bag. Is we teach the kids do the donut, not the volcano, teaching them to do a ring of mulch around the tree and not piling it up. And light bulbs go off in the adults' eyes in the background because, as you're aware, you drive through any given city in America and you see trees with volcano mulching in the urban setting, and people just think that's normal. So it's a chance for us to educate both about trees. So there was a question about pushback from the districts. And somebody had mentioned something about not being able to plant trees because of district guidelines and maintenance costs. So we ask on the application, the last two questions are, is your admin all the way up to district level aware that you're applying for this? Are they aware that trees will be planted? Are they aware that we want all students to participate? And so we kind of want that conversation to happen beforehand. We invite the school spokesperson who applied to ask everybody that would be part of the planting and the long range plans to join us on that training workshop that we have. So we want the maintenance staff there. We want the superintendent there so that they can hear us say, okay, long-term maintenance on this tree, it's going to need to be watered pretty frequently for the first 1 to 3 years. And after that, nature will take over for the most part. But your kids are not in school from May through August, and that's when the trees are really going to need some water. So here's some suggestions for that. We don't want to add to the plate of the maintenance staff or the janitorial staff, and we don't want Miss Smith coming up there every single day during her summer break. So we suggest things like assign June to third grade families and a different two families come every week to, or every day, you've got a different family assigned to come and check on the tree. Or have student council select who's going to do the tree checks during the summer, at which time we want as many hands on deck, as much buy-in as possible on that. The every student piece. This was the first time that a school took me super seriously on every student. They brought their self-contained special ed students out there. We had nonverbal students out there, very much physical mobility limited students. But look at the grin on that little boy's face. And y'all, I've done this presentation a million times since that school, and I still get goosebumps every time I look at these pictures. They brought those kids out that don't normally get included in campus-wide events, and they had a great time. Another example is at a school about 45 minutes away from me this year. They had their self-contained students were out there with everybody else, and they were needing to go in a little bit earlier before the planting was finished. And there was a third grade group planting their tree. And so I just kind of stepped in and I said, hey guys, to the students, I said, do y'all mind if these kids help plant your tree for just a minute, because they're not going to be able to finish their tree. And so they walked up and got started with the teachers and the staff helping. I was moving off to another group, and all of a sudden I hear behind me, Malachi, Malachi. And I turn around, and it was a little boy named Malachi, and he was planting the tree, and the entire third grade around him was just chanting his name and cheering him on as he was helping plant that tree. So it's not just the trees, it's not just the shade, it's not just skin cancer prevention. It's building that community around trees. It's that relationship between trees and people that we love being part of it. We had two districts selected this year that I did get pushback from the superintendents. We say every student will be involved, and I heard back from one of our local forestry staff who was working with them, and he said, hey, let me tell you, the superintendent's plan for all students is the student council's actually going to go out and do all the planting of the tree. But so every student gets to participate. They're going to give each kid a Dixie cup of dirt that they're going to come out and dump in the hole. I was on the phone with the superintendent within an hour, and I said, no, that's not what I mean by every student. And she said, but you don't understand. That's going to be 100 kids at one red maple trying to plant it. And I said, it's okay. They may only get to scoop one shovelful in, but we want all of them out there. She agreed to go ahead and do it, but I mean, you could see the doubt on her face the day we were there. It went fabulously. The kids were rotating through, and she came up to me afterwards and she said, I didn't think it would work, but it did. We asked the teachers to help with classroom management in the outdoor classroom and kind of keep the kids rotating through in line. And then our staff are there to help guide with that too. So, I mean, you really can have 100 students helping plant one tree.
Yeah, real quick, talk a little bit about some of our success measures. Yeah, the schools gain the valuable playground shade, which is, one of our big goals. But as Chrissy was saying, just the experience of planting is great for all of them. So that's one thing. They learn about the value of trees. And you never know. You may have a future arborist there in that group. You just never know. So yeah, they definitely learn the value of trees.
Pointing out a couple of challenges, talking again about how to work through things. This top right photo, there were some issues that year about whether we could have photographs of children's faces. So we still took group photos, and that's how we solved it. But they had some of their artwork in front of their faces for those.
And the other success measures is uh, that the local schools and the Arkansas Department of Agriculture that we all promoted to the public, and the public gets to see that hey, they're doing something to help the school, and the schools are enjoying the getting the shade, getting those trees. So it's a win-win situation for all of us.
I want to point out that top news article on this one. We don't typically send in a photo of just our staff at one of the events, but the Vera Lloyd campus was actually a residential learning facility for students who are in transition with the foster care situation, or they're needing somewhere to stay during a turbulent time in their home life. And so those were students that obviously could not be photographed. So for that one, we had the picture of just the staff. And then the biggest success measure is that everyone has fun planting trees, from teachers and students to our staff to the local community members who are there. That was the end of our slides that we had for the presentation. I've popped in the educational resources slide so that we could spend more time on the different resources, but I would rather answer any questions that we missed, and then we can come back to this after the end. There are our email and phone number contact information, and then down at the bottom is the website that you can go to learn more about our urban and community forestry program. And we do have STOP highlighted on there if you'd like to see it. My screen is still sharing, but if I could end the presentation, I can pull up some of those different resources. So we put out a resource guide this year for them, and it just included kind of the overview of STOP. Of course, it had the map with all of the schools. And we did select some alternate schools this year so that we could, if one of the other schools fell out, I hated to have 157 applicants and we don't end up planting on all 10 campuses. We give them a map that shows who their local contact person is. And the majority of our district representatives have gone above and beyond for no extra pay to earn their ISA certified arborist recognition certification. So they are very familiar and well versed in tree care for hardwoods. We put out a contact list, the general workflow of how the program should go. So, they might call and say, okay, we've done this. What do we need to do next? Here's that general workflow. We give them a species recommendation guide. And then, of course, the presentation slides from the training that we go through with them. And then at the end, we've got some of our different resources and the contact information for them. So here's links to all of those different resources that we were talking about. And then we give them our social media and ask them to follow us. And we follow them. And that way we can see each other's pictures after the events.
That sounds great. I'm happy to facilitate Q&A. First of all, thank you both so much. I think it was just absolutely inspiring to hear, about your program and see those really amazing pictures. So thanks so much for just sharing about your program. That was awesome. I was like smiling so many times throughout the process. And I think some of those great questions really came from, all of the work that you've shared. I think this resource that you shared, for the schools will also be something that people will be interested in looking at. Lauren, maybe if you can help me out with Q&A a little bit, but I know, so we have someone who asked, what is the funding source for this program? State, federal, apologize if that was mentioned earlier. So if you can
Yeah, that's okay. It's one of our programs that we tie into our federal funding. So through our consolidated programs grant that covers all forestry in the urban and community forestry program, I take part of our budget for the STOP program, approximately $10,000 per year because we budget about $250 per tree per campus for the tree, the water bag, and the mulch for it. So that does get them a fairly large tree, usually 1 to 3 inch caliper tree. This year we showed up with some 90-gallon trees, and so there was some raised eyebrows from our staff about helping deliver those and get them to the holes, but community volunteers showed up. We had tractors and backhoes and FFA boys with muscles that helped get them out there. So it is
90
federal
gallons.
funding. Yeah, it is federal funding, and that's part of the basis for why I can't offer them for, home daycares.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, 90 gallons is no easy feat at all. So I'm glad you were able to get the community support to make sure that happened. We have a question from Abigail Cross that asks, between reviewing applications, helping schools select species, and the planting events, how much time is devoted towards how much time is devoted to how much forestry staff time do you think is invested in the program each year?
So for Harold and myself, I like to joke that Stop and Free Tree Fridays are our two tax seasons, if you will, for accountants. So pretty much from when we close the application period until the last tree is planted, it's what would you say, Harold? Maybe 60% of our time on
Oh yeah,
on
probably so.
Mhm. We do delegate it out, like I said, to the local staff. So if there's a school in Northwest Arkansas, they are going to send most of their questions to Scott, their local representative. If it's something he can't answer or they need help from me with, it'll get funneled to me. Sometimes the tree purchases, the local staff will go and facilitate the nursery and the tree, and then Harold and I step in and purchase online, that type of thing.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks. And then someone, Dana Ball, I think, asked, what was the catalyst in 2003 to start the program?
That was before mine or Harold's time. Harold, do you know from?
No, I really don't know. I just know that, as anything, I guess they just had an idea, to try, and it was well accepted, and it was part of the CPG. She had it, she was able to get it into that, and that's just kind of how it all started. I don't know there was a catalyst, per se to it.
Okay, that's helpful. I also just, when we were talking about featuring you all for the community of practice, I just thought that skin cancer kind of, lens was such an interesting entry point to like planting trees on the
Mhm.
campus. I don't think we see that often, but I think it's really great. And it's great that you've also been able to include the healthcare professionals, in terms of educating as well. So we have a Brian Adams who asks, who's responsible for long-term maintenance, like pruning and watering? My local Board of Education will not allow us to plant trees on the property due to maintenance costs. So,
So on the maintenance costs, that would be where, if that were here in Arkansas, I would say field that question to me and let me call the district representative for that because then I can say, routine pruning can be done by the students. We can come out for one day and have one of our people teach the high school FFA instructor how to do the pruning, and then he teaches the students, and then the students go out and do that. There are several cities across the nation that have student youth oriented tree care groups that go out and do those type things for their community. So the students can take that on. Pruning is best done in the fall when the trees are dormant. School's in session at that point. So again, that's something that can be made a long-term project that the school is involved in. We come out when requested. In the past couple of months, I've had 3 of our schools from this year and one from last year that have said, "Hey, our trees don't look real good. Can someone come out and check?" And so one of them, they had a tree that had succumbed to mortality, and they were looking at, do we need to replace it? Is it something that happened in that area? What do we need to do with it? We've got another one that had some pruning that needed to be done, and so our guy was going to go out and show them how to do that. And most of the pruning that they need in the first couple of years can be done with just loppers or shears, and so we can help with that. But again, we want to teach them. It's not we're your new arborist to do the work for you, because the goal is we want the students to learn how to do it. So we do that.
That's great. I think, and Brian, you can also feel free to unmute yourself and add a little bit more insights to your question, like where you're from, et cetera. But I do believe there's a lot of challenges often with long-term maintenance, what students can actually do, within a state or within a region versus other places. And it seems like you all in Arkansas really have mastered a lot of that. Like, no, let the students do, this work. And I think that, like Harold was saying earlier, you might have a future urban arborist or urban forester on your
Yeah.
hand.
No, to qualify, we don't have kindergartners out there with pole saws, pruning with power pole saws, pruning the trees 20 feet high. At some point, you'll need to consult with a local arborist or tree care professional for that. But and then the watering, I think I touched on that briefly. We want the schools to come up with plans for how to do the watering long term.
Within reason, I think, is the greatest, you know, way to go. Um, okay, and then I did have this question around how long do you all provide your consultation and advice post planting? Like, is there a multi-year commitment? Is it like the support indefinite? Like, what does that look like?
So that is, I've been saying that's my, there's always something to improve on. That's the thing I would like to do better, is to get a regular schedule of these are the schools 1 year out. This is how often we visit, 2 years out, us doing the reach out. What we've added in the last couple of years is we'll send out some watering reminders, and we've created email lists for like last year's stop schools, 2 years ago stop schools, and we'll say, hey, it's summertime, make sure before everybody heads to the house, you've got a plan for watering the trees over the summer. Or, hey, it's fall. If you had any trouble with ice damage, let us know. We'll be glad to come out and look. We tell the kids in the ceremony, one of the things that we have them look at, and I'm going to share my screen real quickly and pull this up, is the stop oath, where we have the students say, I will take care of my new trees. They're part of my school. I want to make sure they live a long time. And so we tell the kids, if your tree starts looking sick, let your teacher know, and your teacher can contact us. The water bags that we provide, they're those brown rings. Sorry, y'all. And so I typically mention that part in the ceremonies, and I'll ask the kids, how many of you like chocolate donuts? And oh yeah, yeah, me. How many of you like burnt tortillas? Ew, gross. And so we tell them, when that water bag is full, it looks like a chocolate donut. That's what you want it to look like. When all the water has run out and it's not giving your tree water anymore, it's going to look like a flat burnt tortilla. So we went to one of the schools, and the day after the planting, the maintenance guy was on the phone with our local crew, and he said, all I've heard all day is burnt tortillas, burnt tortillas. Y'all got to come out here and figure out what's going on. These kids obviously were listening, because they're yelling at me about a burnt tortilla. The water bags had let all the water out really quickly, but the students definitely listened and let somebody know that their trees needed more water. Did I
That's
answer everything you were asking, Mikaela, about that?
Yeah, yeah, it does. I love this oath slash pledge. I think that's so amazing. Any other questions coming up, Lauren? Maybe anything I missed?
Yeah, I think you actually covered most of the major questions. I want to lift up a comment that Michaela had, and it was just around the participation of healthcare professionals. And if there's anything more you can say about that, or suggestions for including those folks, for those of us who maybe aren't including them as much as they could be, and including those voices.
That district, the main district nurse had come from staff at the local hospital. So she had all those connections with the local physicians and everything. And that was a larger area with hospital in that town, and different physicians. But we always mention that. Reach out. Here are examples of potential speakers. Reach out to your local healthcare providers, and tie it into your health ed classes.
That's great. We did get one last question in before we kind of conclude. Russ Turpin asked, one reason why our school district opposes trees is attributed to safety and concerns that trees will block the views of security cameras. However, my observation is that the schools with little to no trees are the locations where students are subjected to more stress factors in their lives. How can we better navigate objections focused on safety, particularly when the absence of trees has detrimental long-term cumulative effects? Great question.
Yes, Harold faced that in planting a tree at a women's correctional facility. Do you want to jump on that one, Harold?
Yeah, I did a program at the correctional facility, but they wanted a tree, but there was definitely security issues you can imagine at a facility like that. And so we had to get a small tree, and we got a small tree approved. So, 3 or 4 foot tall tree is all it's going to get. And so at least it gave them a tree to put on their grounds. So yeah, I mean, I haven't seen it in a school situation, but I can see where it could be an issue.
Yeah,
So another option too is, we could, if that was a particular concern of a school, is we could look at tree shape and form of a mature tree, and we can try and find one, maybe a faster growing one that we can prune off more of the lower limbs earlier, so that you have at least a 5 or 6 foot sight line underneath the tree canopy to help with that. And then planting them on the exterior edges of the playground helps with not blocking the camera views. And we do pull up satellite imagery so we can work with the district on that and say, okay, here's your building, here's good areas based on soil considerations. Tell me where your cameras are and what might block that, and then we can move the trees around based on that as needed.
that's really helpful. Thanks so much. Yeah, I think, as schools are navigating so many, security things, cameras are something that, were not probably, consideration maybe, 15 or 20 years ago, but now they're very much the standard, to see what's happening on a campus. So balancing, the health and well-being of students via shade and protecting them from the sun with also being able to see what's going on is probably going to be something we see more and more of. Thanks so much again. I'm just going to kind of close this out. You all were so generous with your time and answering so many questions. So thank you so much.